A tip for when you're eating raw garlic. Raw garlic tends to repeat on me. So I read somewhere that if you open it, if you open the garlic and get this, can you see this? This thing, the green thing from inside, then it will not repeat on you. So this is what I've been doing, and it works up to a point, you know. I mean, if you're having like 10 garlic cloves, then it will repeat on you no matter what you do. But you know, for a couple of garlic cloves in a liter, you see this thing, can you see it? This, just take it out, and that would make life much easier. This is tomato. In Spanish it's called tomato de pera, which is pear tomato. I don't know what it's called in other countries. Excuse me. You need very ripe tomatoes and tasty tomatoes and tomatoes that are not too acidic for this. 2 cloves of garlic, 1 cucumber, a couple of green peppers, bread soaked. This is not absolutely necessary. You can have it without the bread if you want to have raw, if you want to have it completely raw. I use the bread to thicken it, but you can have it without the bread. Traditionally, there is a lot of oil in gazpacho. Instead of oil, I'm using almonds that I soaked overnight. This will make about a liter of gazpacho, which is about a quart. Okay, so that's about a kilo of tomatoes, which is 2.25 pounds. The spices I use are black pepper and cumin. You can also use salt if you use salt. And instead of the almonds, you can use olive oil if you take olive oil. Oh, also 2 or 3 tablespoons of vinegar. Really, that is to taste. The amount of almonds I used is 50 grams, which I soaked overnight. So I'm gonna cut up everything and come back to you. Cheers. So the reason that I said you can do it without the bread is because you can drink it from glass like a, like a smoothie, really. And if you don't use the bread, it will be more liquid. It will not thicken as much. I would not advise you to use water to make it more liquid, because then you will be diluting the taste. So if you want it light and liquidy, then don't use bread and put it through the sieve like I showed you earlier. If you like it thick, I'll show you another way of eating it in a minute. Then use the bread and leave the. I like all the bits and pieces in there, because I feel like I'm chewing something. It's not just liquid. Anyway, now I'll show you how it's traditionally served. Okay, so traditionally you cut up vegetables and add to the gazpacho on top. So a little bit of tomatoes, a little bit of cucumber, green pepper, and this is when I add the onions. I don't add it with it. I just add a little bit. There you go. And this is how gazpacho is done. This is 120 grams, which is 4 ounces of almonds that have been soaked in water overnight. This is stale. I'm using white bread, but you can use any bread you want. It's really very little, about maybe 30 grams of bread soaked in water. This is about 2 tablespoons of vinegar. I'm using apple cider vinegar, but the recipe is, I think, for sherry vinegar. The spices I use are cumin. Now, in the original recipe, there is no cumin, but I like cumin, so I added. And black pepper. You're supposed to use white pepper, but I don't have white pepper. And also about half a liter, which is half a quart of water. But I'm using ice because I'm going to have it now. It won't have, if you're going to keep it in the fridge to chill, just use water. You don't need to use ice. And traditionally in Spain, we cut muscatel grapes and as a garnish, but I don't have that, so I'm soaking some raisins and sultanas in water to plump them up, and then I will add them as garnish. I also forgot to say that I'm putting 2 cloves of garlic. You can have more if you want to, or less. It's to taste. Now my blender has died, so I'm going to be using the food processor, and I will be doing it a bit at a time. So you process everything together, and that's how you eat it. You just put everything together except for the raisins, which are just the garnish. Okay, I'm putting it through a fine sieve because, as I told you, my blender has died, so I had to do it with the food processor. But if you do it with a blender, you don't really need to do this because it will be much finer. The leftover, I'll put it back in the food processor with a little bit of liquid to try and get as much out of it as possible because there's quite a lot left, as you can see. I added more vinegar because it needed it. Really, I mean, the quantities are up to you. However much you want to, if you want it more garlicky, then add more garlic. If you want it less garlicky, add less garlic. If you want it less thick, don't add bread. One thing I haven't added, which traditionally is added, is olive oil, because I thought that it's going to be fatty enough with the almonds, but the olive oil will make it smoother and nicer. But it's doable without the olive oil. Be back in a sec. Okay, for 2 people, this is 1 avocado, about a third of cucumber, a third of a zucchini, 1 small green pepper. There is some vinegar here. I'm using apple cider vinegar, but you can use any vinegar you want. There is some soaked bread here. You will need maybe a small slice of bread. I'm using white bread here, but you can use any bread you want. This is what I have. I'm using ice because I'm going to eat it. I'm going to have the soup now. But if you're, if you have time, just use water and leave it in the fridge to chill, and that way the taste will develop. I also need. I forgot to put here. I'm going to be using some garlic. Just a couple of cloves of garlic, not the whole thing. I will be using some herbs. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be using parsley or coriander. I'll taste it and decide. And for spices, I'm using cumin and black pepper. You can also use salt if you have salt, but I'm salt free. So yeah, I will cut everything up and blend it, and then show you what to do. the garnishing that I put on top is something called dukkha. D-U-K-K-A. I think there is an H or not in the end, I'm not sure. You can find the recipes on the net. Basically, it's it's a Middle Eastern nut and spice mixture. I think the it's originally from Egypt, and usually it's hazelnuts, coriander, and cumin, sesame, and I don't know, some other spices. I didn't have hazelnuts, so I used pistachios, which I roasted, and roasted sesame seeds. I chopped the pistachios, and I added the coriander and cumin and a tiny little bit of chili. But really, you can do it any way you want. It's your mouth, it's your taste.